Let us pray. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of all of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our God, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Jesus is talking, and he's talking about the way people respond to him, and also the way that they respond to God's message that is being spoken through him. And he's looking around and saying, you're kind of like children who are playing a game in the marketplace. I say, we play a happy tune for you and you don't dance. We play a dirge for you and you don't mourn. And then comes John the Baptist. And he lives about as simply as you can possibly live. And you say, he has a demon. And then the Son of Man comes, and he's eating, and he's drinking. And you say, he's a drunkard. He's a glutton. Look at the kind of people he hangs around with. Tax collectors and sinners. And you make up your mind. What is it you're actually looking for? And he says this line here. Wisdom is vindicated by her acts. What are you seeing when you see the Son of Man eating with tax collectors and sinners? Enjoying himself, enjoying the food, enjoying the wine. What's happening there? Is it just a meal? Any old meal? Or is something taking shape? Same with John the Baptist. He's very careful about what he eats. He's very austere in his eating. But is that simply because he's trying to prove himself better? Because he doesn't eat a lot or drink a lot? Well, we do know as we read the Gospels that both Jesus and John drew communities around themselves. You see later at other times where John's disciples come to Jesus. Jesus' disciples ask questions about John's disciples. But they are communities that have been formed. And sometimes communities work better when things are a little bit stricter. Sometimes our appetites do need to be kept in check. Our economic system shows what happens when some appetites aren't kept in check. When some people have billions of dollars and they keep it all to themselves, that is their appetite not being kept in check. And so, we get to this last part, and I think we sometimes miss that very last bit where Jesus says, my yoke is easy and my burden is light. But before that he says, take my yoke upon you. We don't like the idea of yokes. But they can actually be very good for us in times and in certain situations. If you're older and having trouble walking, sometimes having somebody holding on to something as you walk to allow you to walk and stand upright at the same time. That's a form of a yoke. But it does allow the person who's in that yoke to walk, to get the exercise they need to remain healthy. Yokes aren't always bad things. And when we think of yokes as they would have been used with animals, if you got a pair of oxen and you're plowing the field, and one wants to go this way and one wants to go that way, you don't really get much of a plowing job done. It keeps focus. And a lot of us, I know I certainly do, need help keeping focus. I think Paul is actually talking about this in his letter to the Romans. This tendency to do what you don't want to do and not do that which you want to do. Well, being under Christ's yoke, that helps to steer us. And may I say, being under Christ's yoke. You're not called to be under the priest's yoke, because the priest can wander off just as well as any ox. You're not required to be under the yoke of the vestry, because vestries can wander off in many different directions, sometimes all at the same time. You're required to be under the yoke of Christ, because Christ's yoke always moves us in one direction, and that is Godward into the life of the Trinity. Christ's yoke leads us into that perfect communion. We're not going to get there in this life. But that's the direction we want to head. And it's a lot easier if we take the yoke of Christ upon us. If we realize, as the old song says, prone to wander, Lord, I feel it, prone to leave the God I love. It's just a natural tendency we have. We're not perfect. We often, we're plowing a field, so to speak, and suddenly we sort of lose focus and we veer off in one direction. It's kind of like if you're walking down a sidewalk and you're looking at your phone at the same time. You've lost a lot of focus on that when you sort of start walking like this as you go down the street. And then you're likely to bump into other people. The yoke of Christ helps keep us focused. The yoke of Christ leads us on that path that continually will lead us to more perfect union